Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Budget Crafts. So this month's challenge on the Discord is transportation with bonus points for spooky. So we'll give Saltmarsh a rest for this one real quick and try to make something pretty cool here. Now keep in mind this is not a dollar store challenge, it just kind of worked out that way for me somehow. But I've got a couple of these wagons here. They're not too bad. And they come apart easy enough. These figures are going to have mold lines on them, so you can try to take those off with your X-Acto or file them off with a nail file or sandpaper or a metal file, whatever is going to work for you. But you do need to get rid of those mold lines. So just go through and clean up every single one of the model pieces you want to use. You can also use a heat gun if you've got it, or a lighter if you don't, just be careful. And use the heat to sort of melt some of those lines away and to pull out those strange circles that are on them. Decided I wanted to make this guy a little bit different, so I cut his legs off, put some notches in his hat, kind of mutilated his face a little bit, making a zombie, I guess. You can also use the heat to reshape these if you're pretty careful about it. On this guy, I decided I wanted the front part of his hat to come down a little bit, so just heat it up and smoosh it down. I also didn't want these horses to be the exact same either, so I used some heat to soften their legs and move the legs around a little bit. And then on this other one, I went ahead and used the heat to push his tail down just a little, just so they're not exactly the same. These wagon wheels all have some of those strange circles, so just a little bit of heat that'll pull the circle out. If it didn't quite do the job that you want, you can rub your finger over it and sort of smear it. If nothing else, it'll look like mud. Also wanted to give the tops of these things a little bit of character. They're kind of boring on their own. So let's take some various drill bits and poke a bunch of holes. You can take your X-Acto knife and cut out some of those larger holes into a more irregular shape if you want. If you pay attention to the shape of the cover on this wagon, it's got two supports in the middle. So if you do drill or cut out that section like this right here, you're going to have to put a little metal wire or something in there to make up for where the support should be where the cloth is missing. So just keep that in mind when you're cutting these up. Once you're all done doing all that stuff, go ahead and take them outside and spray paint them with a primer and then whatever color you want. The main reason I did black on the wagon covers is because I want to block any light from coming through them because we're going to put lights in here. I only want the light coming out the holes. I do still want these to be white though, so get out whatever kind of white you like. I'm going with an antique white. And just cover the whole outside of it. I want this guy that's not all chopped up to actually fit on one of the horses. So we need to put a little heat to his legs and spread them out so he'll fit. And when you spray paint stuff with a glove on, but the wind is blowing, you get a really cool tan line or something. As for painting these little guys, you can do them however you want. I figured some blue jeans kind of makes sense. I did one of them shirt in a lighter blue, kind of like a denim color, and the other one in a brown. Made both the hats the same brown too. And then I used some sun-kissed peach to do their skin colors. A little bit of red for the bandana, because that makes sense, I guess. And add some gore effects to the zombie one while you've got the red out. For the belt, holster, and boots, I'm using this brown paint pen because it's a sort of different color brown from any of the paints I have. Looks pretty good for leather stuff. For the saddles on these horses, I'm just going to use a darker brown. But on one of them, the one that's going to be ridden, I want the holes on the side of the saddle to go away because the rider doesn't cover those. So a good way to make those go away is to fill them with drywall compound, let that dry completely, and then go back in with baking soda and super glue. Just fill the area you want to be solid with the baking soda and then put the super glue on top of that. The horse that has the saddle painted already, I wanted it to be black, but plain flat black is really boring. So I went through with some pavement, which is nearly black, and did a little dry brushing on all the high spots. And then using that same brown paint pen from before, go ahead and color up all of the reins. Fill in the eyeball with some white paint marker, or white paint, whatever you prefer. And this horse is evil, so give him a red pupil. A little red inside the mouth too, because sure, you need to break up the black somehow. Then I mixed some black paint with gloss Mod Podge and used that as a black gloss to go over the high spots again. Not as much as what I did with the pavement, but just to kind of make some variation. Then go ahead and paint all of the hooves white. Again, I used antique white. It's kind of a dingy kind of white. The drywall compound is dry on the other horse now, so go ahead and do your baking soda and super glue. Just put it down where you want it to be, and then use a nice soft brush to brush off the excess. And go ahead and put your super glue. Make sure you're using liquid super glue. If you need to spread it out some, use a popsicle stick. Don't use your brush or your brush will be trash. It'll probably also immediately glue to the surface. A little more baking soda just to make sure it's completely covered. Then once that's nice and dry, go ahead and get out a file and file it down to flat or whatever it is you're trying to do. You can file a design into it, that kind of thing. But just go ahead and file it down so the surface is nice and even. I got these rings with some cool spiders and bats and skulls and stuff on it and put them on a post to spray paint for prime and decided not to use them, so ignore those. Now the driver of this thing is going to be a skeleton. We use one of those skeletons from the big bag of skeletons on Amazon. Decided I want the hand that is raised higher to be holding like a whip or something. So just cut the axe head off the top. And then the other hand I want holding the reins, so cut that off right next to his hand. Trimmed a little platform from around his feet. And then use the heat and reshape method to make him fit on the seat of the wagon. If you need a sharper bend than you're able to get by just using your fingers, or if this thing has gotten too hot to touch, you can use pliers or cutters as long as you don't squeeze hard to get a real sharp, crisp area where you're bending. He's too big to fit in the front of here, so I'm just going to cut away a portion of the roof, and then we'll go in and put one of those little pieces of metal wire in there to make it look like the hoop is still there, but the fabric is torn away. His legs are too long for this seat too, so we'll cut a piece of foam, leave the paper on one side of it because we want to use super glue, and then just super glue it to the existing seat. Don't forget to put a little bit of wood grain texture on that. Now if you want your other horse some color other than black, go ahead and take that outside and spray paint it. Same thing with your skeleton, he's got to be primed. And then once those are primed, go ahead and paint them up. Do antique white on this horse's hooves, and while you've got that out, go ahead and do it on anywhere there's bone showing on that skeleton. Paint the driver's seat brown, and then while you have the brown out, you might want to do those posts inside the cover there. They're supposed to be wooden posts. You probably won't ever see them, but just in case. Get a darker brown and dry brush all of the wood pieces with it. I also decided that I wanted the zombie guy to be hanging off of the tailgate thing on the rear cart, so I just flipped that one over. And then used the same dry brush to go ahead and cover up that little spot where there was no color. While you've still got that dark brown out, go ahead and do the saddle of your other horse. I did mine in gray. You can also use that to do the little handle that's in the skeleton's hand. Now get some gray on your brush and do a little bit of dry brushing on the wood with that gray, just to kind of make it look old and aged. Probably also a good idea to do a few varying shades of gray on your gray horse, just so it's not one solid color. Same thing as the last horse, just go ahead and color the reins and stuff with your brown pen. And I decided I wanted this one to have a black mane and tail. Thought that looked kind of cool. Use a little pavement inside his ear and in his mouth so it's not gray inside there, it's got some shadow. I used a silver paint pen here to try and put like horseshoes on it. I don't think it really made a difference, but you're welcome to do that while you have your pins and stuff out. To get this rider to stay on there, just put some crazy glue on his boots and his butt and stick him on. Finish painting out your skeleton however you want him to be. I did all of his armor and accents in silver, except for the one on his chest I did in gold. Alright, so for the lights here, the dollar store's got a bunch of different kinds. I really like the look of these purple rope lights, but they're actually only bright at the very start and the very end. The middle doesn't have much light to it, it's just like little dots. Very cool as a firefly effect in a cave or something, but not really going to work for what I'm doing here. I also want to point out that this style of light that is claiming to be orange is actually a lot closer to red. So this kind with the really super bright bulbs that claims to be purple is a lot closer to blue. Maybe it's purple in the way a black light is, but it's basically blue compared to the purple rope. But it's really bright, so that's what we're going to use. There are a few places you could put the battery pack. My friend Roto over on the Discord put his under the wagon. That worked out pretty well. I'm going to put mine in the wagon, but it won't fit that way without doing some surgery. So, get out your X-Acto and cut away a portion of the seat for the rear wagon. That little hole left in the floor, we're actually going to need that a little bit bigger later, so if you want to cut away more of that now, go ahead. That battery pack's got some weight to it, and the wires flopping around will be annoying, so before we do that, let's just go ahead and paint these wheels. I did them in a base coat of silver Sharpie first, and then used the black metallic stuff that we used in the steampunk build to go over top of that. And don't forget the little hubs in the middle. Once you're all done with that and you're sure that the battery pack is going to fit, just go ahead and hot glue it in place, making sure that the battery cap is to the top and that the on-off switch is to the back. And this thing stands out like a sore thumb, so grab some of those planks that you made when you were making the stables and cover up the top of this thing. Just keep in mind where the screw hole is for the battery cover, so you're going to have to dig that out. Same idea for the back of it, because this is open on the back. We don't want anybody seeing this weird piece of technology in here. Go ahead and cut some little planks and just glue them on, making sure not to cover up your switch completely. In order to get these wagons to hitch together, we're going to have to make a little tow hitch. And that's pretty simple. Just cut a little piece of foam, maybe cut the corners off and round them if you want to, and glue it on there. It wasn't quite high enough in the original version, so I had to stack it up about 3 pieces high. Take the hot glue gun and burn a little hole in it, and then just glue it to the bottom of the lead wagon. And now we have a hitch the appropriate size to hook these things together. Just go through and paint all the foam. This is not really going to be seen much, so you don't have to be too careful. You do just want to get rid of the blue or white or whatever color you used. As for wiring the lights, you can do them in whatever orientation and placement you like. I figured I would hide them along the sides of the wooden posts inside the canopy with the bulb at the very top, because you're not likely to see the bulb there. You would see it on the bottom though. I also started at the back, that way you have a little bit of cord lead there, so you can still pop the top of this thing off to change out the batteries. So just put one light in there. Make sure you can run your wire across to where the next one goes, glue that in, and keep on going. So remember I said we needed that hole to be kind of big? This is why. We're going to feed the wires through the bottom of the carriage, run it along the tow hitch, and back up the other carriage so that it, hides underneath. So if you didn't cut the hole big enough, just go ahead and dig it out now, enough to get the light bulbs through there. String all the lights out through the bottom, and then drill a hole in the floor of the carriage in the front, and push all the lights up through there. For some reason, the 5th bulb on my string was dead, which is fine actually, because that gives me a point to connect it. You can just lay it down flat in the wagon and glue it down, and look at that, hot glue brings lights back to life, I guess. Before we get too crazy here, let's go ahead and put our metal hoops in for where the fabric is torn away. I'm just using some real thick, this is like 14 gauge wire, maybe 16 gauge. Just bend it into a loop, stick it in there, and hot glue it in place. And then go ahead and hot glue your lights into the front carriage however you want. There you go, it's all lit up. Can't really see any bulbs, you can't see the wires at all. Take the part that connects to the horse and clip it right in between the skeleton's feet. Put a little super glue on the pegs and stick it to the horse. And a little glue on Zombie Dude's hand and stick him on the back of the wagon train there, so it looks like he fell out and is hanging on or trying to climb on to start with, whatever. These guys look a little bit strange without any reins in their hands, so take some jute cord. I have some here that I've already colored gold and put nooses on. I'm going to recolor them with the paint marker, the same color as I did the stuff that's molded to the horse. Just figure out about how much you're going to need in a loop, and then super glue the ends on right where they end on the molding on the horse. So it's like one continuous thing. This guy needs a torch or a something in that hand that's raised. So I'm just going to drill a little hole in his hand and use one of those torches we made a long time ago. Toothpick fits right in that hole, don't even need any glue. For his reins, go ahead and wrap them around his arm a couple times and then pull them out behind him so you've got the action movement motion thing going on, and then just super glue it into place. For the skeleton guy's whip, I'm actually going to do kind of like a weird demented version of a lasso. It's like a noose lasso whip thing. Just fray out the end of your string and super glue it to his handle. For his reins, we'll do the same thing as the other guy, except I want these to be slack. So make it kind of long, put the loop around his hand, and super glue it in place. Also, I already know that I want this wagon train to be making a hard left turn, so I want to have the string sticking out to the right of the wagon, so if it were turning, the reins would fly out to the right, trying to keep the physics right. So these are starting to look pretty good, but the plastic cloth stuff is bothering me, so I have some of this creepy cloth from the dollar store. And this stuff is cut proof. I'm telling you, I don't care what you're using, it is really hard to cut this. But you're going to have to cut it, so figure out something that'll work and cut off a couple little pieces to cover up the tops of these things. If it's oversized, that's totally fine, you can trim it later, but go ahead and put them on the top and super glue along the edges and around the holes that are really big. It'll probably take a little while for that super glue to dry, but once it does, go in with some scissors or a razor blade, whatever, trim off the excess, and then trim around the holes. When you do it around the holes, though, you want to try and get it to where it's a natural spot for the fabric to tear so you can push the excess into the hole. So if it's like a hole on the side, then you want to cut it along the top and then have it fold down. If it's a hole in the top of the wagon, cut it anywhere and stuff it in. To get that noose lasso to be nice and stiff, or semi-stiff at least, just go ahead and soak the entire string in liquid super glue and prop it up some way that it's not going to move while that dries. Basically the same thing we did on the pirate ship with those ropes coming down the side. It was here I started looking at using the spiders and skeletons and skulls and all that good stuff and decided it looked kind of dumb on this build. They are good for other things, but not here. So I decided not to use those. For a base to put all of this stuff on, why not a dollar store clipboard? Like I said, this wasn't actually a dollar store challenge. I kind of did that to myself, not intentional. I just had a bunch of stuff from the dollar store and it worked. To get that clippy portion off of the top, it's just two very terrible rivets. I just used a drill bit about the same size and drilled them out, but you really don't even need to. They're not even on there that well. You could probably just pop them out with a screwdriver and a hammer. And the little clippy thing is completely undamaged, so you could clip that onto something else, or I don't know, it might be useful for something. Throw it in the box. To fill up the holes where the rivets were, just put it flat and squirt some hot glue in there. Once it's dry, you can use your knife and just cut it right off. Nice and flush. No more holes. Go ahead and put all your pieces on there and try and figure out where about you're going to want them. That'll help you lay out how you want to do this thing. I want the wagon chasing the rider, but I wanted them to be on a road to start with, and then the rider took off off-road and they had to make a hard turn to catch him or whatever, so they've gone off-road. So just trace out where the road is going to be. Cover the entire road section in some cheap glue, and then cover that in sand. I am not sponsored by Don Francisco's, but if they want to send me some coffee, I won't say no. Anyway, once you got all your sand on there and smushed it in really good, go ahead and knock off the excess. And then to build up the area that is going to be grassy or whatever you're making your off-road area, go ahead and put down some drywall compound, but not straight because it dries really flaky and crumbly. You're going to want to go ahead and mix this with some Mod Podge and paint. I used a dark green paint and a little bit of brown to make it sort of like an olive color. Mix it up real good and smear it around. Go ahead and put down some more glue towards the middle of your road. And then put down your dirt medium of choice. Put some glue down on your grassy area and then add some rocks to that. And now I'm going to do one more thing. I know Lindy Beige is going to be mad at me. Roads like this are only made by a horseless carriage, but this is how people identify roads, by the 2 tracks, so whatever. Put down some glue in the middle of your road and all over your grass stuff, and then cover all that in flocking. If you want some taller grass, you can take these little tufts from the chip brush we sacrificed a little while ago. Just a little bit of glue on them and stick them down. If you want them shorter, you do want them to be uneven like this on top, so go ahead and cut the excess you don't want on there. Cut it away from the bottom. As long as you're pinching it tight, they won't go all over the place, and super glue bonds them back together pretty much instantly. I also have some of these little green tufts from Army Painter. They work pretty good. We'll just put a few here and there. The back of them is sticky already, but it doesn't really ever stick to anything in my opinion, so I stick them down with super glue. Put down some 50-50 water and Mod Podge, and then my secret ingredient that I totally stole from Mel the Terrain Tutor. Italian seasoning. Seriously, this works really well for making various little grass and debris particles, and it smells great. Once all your Mod Podge has dried, go ahead and take it out and spray it down with some clear coat to lock all that stuff down. And then it's time for some washes. I made a real quick and dirty brown wash by just watering down a bunch of brown paint. Mostly only worried about getting it where it's way too green from the drywall compound stuff. And put a little black wash in a few of those spots too. Then go ahead and put the brown wash all over your wagons, but not like 100%, just sort of smush it around so the wagon looks like it was white at one point and got really dirty. Little black wash in the creases on the front looks pretty good. Definitely put black wash all over the zombie. You can also do up the skeleton's face, the torch handle, the rider's hand, anywhere you need the details to show up where they're really kind of muted. That's a good spot for black wash. I also put brown wash all over the gray horse to give him some more color. And I did some more black wash in various spots on the road just to sort of break up that dirt color. I also noticed that we developed a warp here on our base. So flip it over, cover the entire underside of it in Mod Podge, and smear it all around as even as you can possibly get it. Support the corners on some bottles and put something heavy in the middle of it. Let it dry that way and there you go, no more warp. Finally, time to put all your pieces on there. Just get them arranged exactly how you want them. And then put some super glue down underneath each of the wheels, under the zombie, under the horse's hooves. Change the lighting a little bit so you can see what it looks like without a artificial sun shining on it. There you go. Nice little lit up Halloween decoration diorama thing. The scale is way too big for 25 mil, but it could be an interesting little set piece to, have like a background story kind of thing. This guy's getting chased down by some undead that want to capture him and throw him in the rear wagon. I don't know. The lights are definitely more blue than they are purple, but it still looks pretty cool. We will return to doing the salt marsh stuff on Saturday, barring any crazy winter storms that shut my power off and break my computer. course, if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so over on Patreon, where you can get some exclusive access, or you can do a one-time donation over on Ko-fi. And of course, with the exception of dollar store items, any kind of tools and supplies I like to use are listed on my website through some Amazon affiliate links. Doesn't cost you anything, but does help the channel. If you like this video, you might like some of the other ones, maybe some of the ones I've referenced in this video. But of course, as always, thank you for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.